Good morning, Sarah. How are you today?
Morning, Michelle. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I feel so lucky to be talking to you today on multiple levels. Every single time we connect, I feel like I find another nugget of myself, but also just kind of more about you.
Oh,
And
thank you.
yeah, well, you're honestly super fascinating, and we were.
I don't know about that, but thank you.
I find you fascinating. And the subject matter is super fascinating to me because, of course, anybody who knows me knows that I love behavioral science. And so, Sarah Deane is the founder of, I keep saying EMQ.
Oh, I do too. But it's like I'm trying. I have to remind myself we are changing names.
Exactly. So it's MEvolution.
MEvolution.
So Sarah Deane is completely fascinating to me on so many levels. And one of the reasons why is she is an innovator in the human resources space. She is an expert in artificial intelligence, and she is the founder of MEvolution, correct?
Correct. Like it's been a journey to get here. You see, we've evolved ourselves. So
I love it. Well, you know what? If you weren't growing, you wouldn't be evolving, right?
there
So
you go.
how
There
amazing
you
is
go.
that? So we were introduced by a mutual friend, and that seems to be how most people are coming to Opportunity Knocks. And it just is yet another opportunity in my life to be introduced to more amazing women like Sarah. So, Sarah, what I'd love to do is actually start a little bit by you kind of telling people about yourself and how did you get to where you are? And by the way, she's also a mother.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yes, I am. Probably the most important role, right?
Yeah, it
Um,
is. It's one of the
out,
hardest
out of
roles.
my many roles, right? Um, so I'll give you a quick background. So there's a couple of parts to me. Obviously, I'm part engineer. I started out in computer science and artificial intelligence. I have a real passion for data and algorithms and what we can do with data and how can we help humanity expedite change, things like that, by using data. But I did find out I was not a coder, certainly not a coder. I more loved the behavioral and brain side of everything, the science behind the AI, the algorithms, things like that. So that actually led me to my second chapter, if you will. And that's where I kind of got more experience in behavioral and cognitive science. Very, very lucky I got to travel the globe studying human behavior or doing avid people watching. And the way I brought it all together was through experience design. So throughout my career, that spanned products, solutions, space, events, all kinds of experiences. But what I noticed was when it came down to measurements, we spent a lot of time and effort gathering insights, but we
Mhm.
rarely knew the action to take. Like we didn't always know what was the best bet for our resources, things like that, ways that we would guarantee success, right? So
Mhm.
knowing what I know around data and algorithms, I basically created a way to measure goals, typically hard to quantify goals, in a way where the measurement was the roadmap. Because that way you can make good decisions about where you invest and know that you are always going to, no matter the choice, be moving towards your goal. So I actually then started my company, and that was my third chapter. And we've done many models across customer experience, employee experience, leadership. But actually, pre-pandemic, what I call BC, before COVID, if anyone remembers that, we
I don't
noticed
think
that.
so.
I know, I don't even know
I'm
how long
starting to
ago
get
that was
used to
now.
it now.
I know it's our current times, right? But before all of that, we had seen stress and anxiety was on the increase. It was just actually really rare to find someone that was like, yes, I feel great, showing up at full capacity. Everyone was kind of busy and tired.
Mhm.
Um, that's obviously now a million times worse, right? But what we decided at that point was like, we have to go and solve for that. There's lots of solutions out there, but these numbers are still rising. So obviously there's a gap, and we thought, can we help there? So we set out to answer the question, what's needed for people to perform and feel their best. But over time, using that model, the data that we captured actually revealed to us that there was a set of kind of core capabilities that unlocked human capacity. And then there were also a set of blockers to that. So things that people experience in different levels that can really limit their capacity and limit how much energy they have. So
Mm.
that brings us to present day. So MEvolution is focused on identifying people's blockers and then helping them remove them.
Yeah, so interesting for me is that So we know some key things like you're talking about stress, like is something that probably blocks people, but is there a measure, I'm sure, like a threshold, like an average threshold for people when they are able to kind of still hit their goal versus when there's just like a likelihood that they just will not get there? Just curious.
Yeah, so the way we do it is by unlocking more of your capacity. The more of your capacity that you can access, the more you can achieve, the more of your potential you can reach. And what we found is it's kind of on a scale of blockers, right? Your prevalence of blockers. The more blockers you have, the less capacity you have. Once people reach around the 80% mark on our scale, they're living, generally speaking, at a really good level of capacity. You can keep growing, absolutely, right? You can keep honing it in, keep increasing your capacity. But once you hit around the 80% mark in general, you pretty much have good capacity to put around your life and kind of push yourself and achieve more. So
Mm.
that's kind of how we measure.
So what type of, what type of companies do you end up working with then? Just curiously.
All kinds. I mean,
Is it
when
companies or
you're
individuals?
both directly to individuals or through companies for their employees. I always say to people when they ask me that question, it's kind of funny because if our goal is to help someone be their best selves, then there's no specific vertical for that, right? It's
Mm.
humans. So we work with all kinds of companies, tech companies, pharmaceuticals, financial banking, all kinds of companies that want to help
Even
their employees.
universities, right? Because you recently just
Yeah.
did a study with Stanford, right?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
put it through one of their graduate school of business classes as well, and we had a great cohort go through that, the system, and kind of work on their blockers. Yeah,
yeah. So for you, I mean, one of the things that you talked about is that you basically started out more on the tech side of things and engineering side of things, and then transition more to the science component. And so is this something that you knew, was it within you the whole time, or was it something that you discovered? Just curious. Because one does not, I mean, one generally can feel called to become an entrepreneur, not necessarily like, you had an idea and you decided to step in, or how did that work?
yeah. So I'd say I've always had a really big interest and passion about the brain. And
Mhm.
then obviously, as I was growing up, we were seeing technology be introduced, like the coming of the internet and computers
Yeah.
and things like that. And so obviously I started getting interested in technology too. And for me, AI fused the two. I mean,
Mhm.
when I was doing AI, we didn't even have face detection working properly. And now it's everywhere, right? So
Exactly.
um
Particularly in Asia, but
yeah. So it was kind of this natural journey, and if you really think about the essence of AI, it's understanding how the brain works to the point that we can try and kind of mimic it and things like that. So I find that they're all actually very connected pieces, even though the
Mhm.
journey sounds funny. And then this ended up just being something that I feel like is a great purpose to use all of those skills for. Like we
Mhm.
can see the transformation in people, and for me that's just like, look, I could use these skills to do many things, right? I could be working in customer experience or whatever, but using it in this gives me the greatest kind of buzz, right? Seeing people's transformations, them telling us like, oh, I'm such a better partner now, I'm such a better leader now, like that. For me, that's what I'm passionate about, because I literally think everyone deserves the chance, no matter who you are, your circumstance, to turn up to life as your best self and then just see what's possible.
Yeah.
So it's kind of
So
part calling and part interest.
no, I appreciate hearing that, because our viewers are mostly women who are seeking to become entrepreneurs, and in which case they're looking for what was it for that entrepreneur that basically allowed them the step in, like why did they step in, right? And so I think in your case, it's interesting to see that it was part purpose and part calling, right? And that it started at an earlier age. So we keep referencing AI, and of course, we're a little bit more versed in what AI is, but it's artificial intelligence for those people who are kind of like, I don't understand the acronym, and I know it's come so far, and I know a tiny bit about it. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about where AI started, where it came now, and like we know it's more prevalent, but there's a lot of fear around AI too, particularly in the older generations, because they feel like everybody's tapping into them, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about that.
Yeah. So fundamentally it's about, can we mimic the things that we do and we think, right, on a computer? But it's really, how can we help extend human capabilities, enhance human capabilities? How can we make humans faster and better and smarter through technology? And I think that's what we have to remember. Of course, like any invention, you can use it for good and for bad, right? And sadly, of course, you have individuals that might be out there wanting to use it for bad, right? But like my focus is how do we use the power of it for good? And you can do that by helping people be faster. Like take medical diagnosis, like we can do that much better, faster. Can we extend human capability? I think a lot of the fears come, they think like, oh my God, they're getting inside my head, or oh my God, they're tracking all this information on me. Of course, a lot of the systems are built on information, or oh my God, AI is going to come and take away all the jobs, right?
Yeah,
Now,
exactly.
part of this is like, look back in the whole humanity era, right? There's always been different revolutions and moments, right, where we used to go into a bank and talk to a teller and everyone freaked out at the ATM.
Exactly.
Well, guess what? The tellers are still there, and so is the ATM. But like people changed skills, right? We change, we adapt, we evolve. And I think that's the key. It's like everyone that wants to embrace it should be thinking about, okay, if we have this capability, what amazing things can we achieve now? Like if we have the capability that this AI brings us, what amazing things can we go and do now with it for humanity? You know, if you have an AI tool at work that saves someone time because it organizes their tasks, say, like what can your employees now do with that time? They can deliver maybe a better customer experience. Maybe they can actually have some time for themselves and not have such a stressful day. Like there's so many benefits. We just have to think, how are we going to shift? How are we going to use up that time? How are we going to use the benefits?
Yeah, I like that perspective. So if you were to actually, and it's really important for people to hear it, right? If you were to actually, do you feel like there's a gap in the market somewhere with AI that like, if you were to like in your druthers, basically like I'm sure knowing you have a lot of ideas. So that you would want to implement if you had all the money in the world and all the resources.
Well, so all the money in the world is one thing. I think also like we have to have the compute power to deliver on it, right? And I think that's when I was doing that's what would stop me and get me all frustrated. It was like I would have to wait weeks to get my image set back to see if my algorithm worked, right? So we've got loads of great brains writing great science, and like we have good theories on different sciences, but like we have to have the compute power. And we're moving more and more towards that every day. I mean, compute power is insanely grown, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's really exciting when we have the compute power to do the stuff that we want to do and it's available. What can we do then? But like everything, I mean, take self-driving cars, right? Like we're going to have to shift and think about what regulations do we need in place? What policies do we need in place to use them in a manner
Like
that's good and ethical? Yeah, like if a self-driving car has an accident, what happens then? You know, like, so we have to think about it. Like, it's all well and good to be enthusiastic about the technology. I obviously am, but I'm also very conscious and aware that we need to think about what's the update to policies, to regulations, to helping humans understand how to actually use it to deliver the outcomes. You know, there's a lot that needs to take place for us to use it successfully.
Yeah. So, you know, you're clearly a super determined person. And one of which
on some things.
Yeah, well that's what's very interesting for people to learn about, right? Is that, you know, you're determined and you're one that actually doesn't get swayed when you don't have the information. Clearly anybody who's trying to find an algorithm of how to optimize people to help reach their goals, that can sound very lofty, right? And we've talked about this, like being a coach and stuff like that, how do we motivate people? How do I tap into those parts of them that is being blocked, right?
Yeah.
So in your case, what do you think it is for you that never allows you to stop? Or what, and then on the reverse, what stops you?
Yeah, I was gonna say there are times when I do stop, right? And I think for me, it's a kind of a three-part process. And if you will, you have to remember, I've also been my own guinea pig. So I've been using this from the very day we came up with the very first version of the algorithm, right? So I've been training my brain for a while, but there's three parts to it. One is like, am I seeing it clearly? like step back, give my brain a space to like see the situation with absolute clarity, or as much clarity as I can get. 2, am I interpreting it correctly, or do I have stuff that's causing me to make wrong assumptions? And then 3, how am I responding to it? So my goal is always, let me make the best decision I can with the information I have. That's it. Like, I'm not striving to be perfect. I'm striving to be as optimal as I can be. Like, my goal is not perfection.
Yeah, well, but see, that's an important lesson for people, because many people think that when they start something that it has to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
And I think you said a very important thing, is that you were your own guinea pig, right? And that it's trial and error a bit, right?
Yeah, for sure. Science, right? You try something out, you learn, you go change it, you try again, you test a few more.
Yeah. So what are the types of things that do stop you then? Like, when is that, is there something specific? Like, you talked a little bit about like when you worked in artificial intelligence, that the computing component of it was like difficult, the power, whether or not it was going to be able to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it took me a long time to run tests, right? And I was like, okay, this is annoying. I have this science and I want to test it and I have to wait. What it came down to was I just did not enjoy coding. I enjoyed the science, and to enjoy this like creation of the algorithm, I needed to run my tests so that I can make tweaks, right? I just didn't have, I knew myself. I needed to move a bit faster than that. But the things that
Lack
stop,
of patience.
yeah, for sure. I have way more patience now than I used to. For sure, lack of patience back then.
That's becoming another.
Yeah, well, actually, yeah, yes, big part of it. But before then, also, I kind of realized like the misaligned expectations around patience, and I think like if I move 1 minute faster, like what really do I gain? Just perspective, I think helped with that. But the times now that I say no are, like I said, if I weigh it up and I'm like, look, it's just not the right choice at the right time, I don't worry about what ifs. It's just not the right time. That's it. Yeah. Second of all, if it goes against any of my value systems, like any of my values, it goes against it, I'm just not willing to put the effort and energy into it, because I know it's going to be a tough journey, right? I'm going to deal with conflict, internal conflict, like why bother? So it's unlikely that I would say yes to something that conflicts with my value system. And those are some of the key things I take into account, but I'm always looking at context. Like, look at the context of the situation and look at the goal and look at your options. I'm always looking at options. Like, what's all the different options?
Well, I love the fact that, you're really talking about reflection, like giving yourself that space for reflection and evaluation. And then you're also really talking about boundaries, is that you're really clear on your boundaries. And I have to say, that's something that we haven't known each other for that long, but that's something that I really notice about you. You're very clear. And that doesn't, not to gender generalization. However, sometimes women aren't clear because they're trying to be pleasers.
Yeah.
So, and you bring up value system, and I'm a huge person on values. And I feel like it's so interesting to do these podcasts. I will tell you, about 90% of the time when I ask somebody the question, what are your top 5 core values? They start listing things that aren't values necessarily. So we talk about value systems as family values, right, when you're younger, and then it kind of goes away. And unless you have the opportunity to work with somebody who really works on it, then sometimes you're not even clear. But I know you're clear. So, yes. I would love to hear what your top 5 core values are that you make choice from every day.
Yes. So first and foremost, for me, is accountability. Looking at what I could have done in a situation. Is there anything I could have done to make something better, and being really honest with myself about that. But what's big here is I value accurate accountability. So that's not too much blame and not too little. It's a very accurate view to your role and the role of others. That's really important to me. When people are not accountable, I get all kinds of feelings. I'm like, I feel very strongly about it. And that's a key. If you feel strongly about something, like you have an emotional reaction to someone being a certain way, that's actually a key that it's probably a core value for you, right?
So, and it's interesting. I think it's interesting you use the word blame.
Yeah.
That's an interesting.
Because so many people actually pass themselves too much blame sometimes, imagining associations where there aren't any. And some people always go to blaming external forces and never look at their part. So it's like, okay, how can you be accurate? Not too much, not too little, accurate, right? Second,
it's a funny word though, because people don't use that word blame very often anymore. It's like the same as people take judgment sometimes, right? Judgment
Yeah,
can be positive, judgment
yeah.
is not negative always.
No, I'm all about releasing constraints.
I love
I
it.
don't, like, it's your interpretation of the word. I don't have an emotional response to a word because
Totally.
it's like, what's the context? Like, I'm always thinking context and options.
Yes,
Context.
I noticed that.
So second is integrity.
Mhm.
And that's because like I really don't like lies at all, not even little white ones. And I really get triggered by fairness as well. Like if something's not fair. So that all to me kind of comes under integrity.
Mhm.
I also value consideration,
Mhm.
thinking of others, being considerate to others. Even that, for me, a part of that is efficiency, not wasting time, being considerate
Mhm.
of time. Like, so consideration. I value impact. So for me,
Mhm.
that is doing the best I can, no matter what I'm doing. I could be wiping down the surface in the kitchen, just like, let me do a good job of it,
Mhm.
feel good about it, not be sloppy about it. So am I bringing impact and value with the time of whatever task I'm doing?
Mhm.
And then finally, respect. So accepting other people. I don't have to agree with you, but I will respect that that choice is yours. I will respect that your views might be different to mine, but also important to me that people respect my views too. You know,
Mhm.
so
Yeah, I think those are very they're all so strong and also deliberate. You know,
they
like
work together.
there's no waffling in those words
I
with
know
those
them.
values. Yes.
I know from the way I act when anything is in conflict from them. I
Mhm.
know from the feelings
Absolutely.
it gives me that those are definitely the things. And you know, it's funny because if you just asked me off the bat before I'd done the work and exercise to really think about them, which I'd done through our own system a while ago, I would have been like, I'm loyal and I'm this and I'm that and I'm this, like all these words. And it doesn't mean that I'm not any of those
Mhm.
things, but your core is your core.
I
Like your
agree.
core is consistent. It's always how you're showing up every situation. And that's the difference. It doesn't mean these are my only values or the only thing
No,
I
of
value.
course.
It's my core. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I feel the exact same way. It's, it's hard to narrow it down to 5 values, because there are, I mean, I'm sure fun is one of yours too,
Oh
because
yes, I'm the biggest
yeah,
believer. Work hard, play hard, have a good time, have a laugh. Yeah, for sure.
exactly. Yeah, but I think in the end, I see those things, and it's interesting, like important about talking about values is how this ties back to what you do every day. Not just in your choice in your family life, but what you're doing for a living and what you're bringing forward. All of those things tied back into the system that you're providing for people, right?
Yes.
So MEvolution, is that the actual, I don't know if I should call it a test or assessment, or what is that, or is that called something different?
So MEvolution is a system in its entirety, and there's two
Okay.
parts to it. The first is the diagnostic part, so the evaluation, and then the second part is your development journey.
Mm,
So the actual evaluation, it's got an acronym. It's called EMQ.
yeah.
That's the assessment piece of the system, and you take it. It's a reflection exercise. You know how much I love a good reflection. You
Mhm.
reflect on scenarios. You sit. You think. You answer the questions. That then gets pushed through the model. We actually use over 1,200 indicators to show us, one, what's blocking you, two, what's the impact of those blockers, and three, how do your blockers play together.
Mhm.
That's really important because everything's very connected.
Mhm.
And then we use that information to create your own personal roadmap of
Okay.
the activities that you need to do in the best way, because we know the connections between them. So we can
Mhm.
make sure that you're always doing something in the best order to get the fastest results.
So when you, because you're basically saying that you get prompts, right, to do almost like homework, right, to test it
Yeah,
out.
little activities.
Yeah. So then who is checking with you on the other side? Like, do you have like an assigned person, or how do they actually get to find out, like, what are my blockers? Because look, every single person in the world should be signing up for this because the reality is if we all knew what was blocking us from getting to our goals, just think about how much more efficient we all would
Oh
be
yeah,
operating in the world.
yeah,
So
and nicer to each other.
yeah, wouldn't that be? Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, there it is.
yeah.
Just wait till I tell you this crazy story that happened. So
I can't wait.
that's for later.
Okay,
Um,
when we finish this part, we'll talk. We'll have a little 5 minutes because I can't wait to hear.
yeah, it was crazy. So, but you know what? So, who do they work with on the other side, or are they just getting constant feedback?
So it kind of works like a recipe to follow. So you know the system, Nutri-System, if you want to lose weight, it just kind of delivers you your food. All you have to do is cook it and eat it.
Yeah.
This is like that. Every week you get your little thing to do, your exercise. You just follow the questions. We are going to teach you how to ask yourself the right questions, create the space you need to grow and rewire your mental muscles. And you're guided the whole way. You have a little digital guide called Serena. And there's, of course, options for support if you need more help. But it's a very guided journey to create the space you need to ask the right questions, because that is how we retrain our brain. Structured guidance to retrain your brain to think different ways.
And is there an opportunity to then work with somebody individually from there?
Yes, we have support options and partners as well.
Okay, that's
But to really make sure we can reach people, make it affordable and approachable for everyone. You know, that brings us full circle back to the beginning, using technology to really scale human capabilities, you know?
mhm. So you know, tell me about, you know, when you were getting started with MEvolution, and I'm sure there were a lot of people that were like, well, how are you going to measure that? How are you going to do that? That's not possible. It's a very lofty goal, blah, blah, blah. Tell me about what you had to tap into or what you had to overcome in order to get to kind of your launch, like doing this. Like, how
Yeah.
long was this period of time?
Oh, we've been on the journey of getting it all ready all the way from like 2017, refining the algorithm, making sure it's accurate, testing out all of the different recipes, right? Does it really work? Like, is it sustained? So it's been a journey. And I'll tell you, like, I don't worry too much about what people say. I'll just show you through
Mhm.
data. So we have the data to show that in just 4 or 5 weeks, people start feeling differently. They start making different choices. And so I don't worry too much about what people say, because I'm just going to show you the evidence.
Mm.
Like it's,
Yeah, the numbers don't lie, as they say, right?
well, yeah, well, so
They
that's the
can
other thing.
lie.
That's about data, right?
Having
It's
worked in marketing, I know they can lie.
right,
We
right.
will figure
But
out a way to make it look good.
yes, yeah. Well, in this case, they're all true, and we've got like lots of advocates and testimonials to show that it works. And you know, that's my thing. It's like, look, we were very lucky. Our company had created lots of very proven models beforehand, so people knew the process of our model creation worked. This, of course, this one's a funny one because we set out to answer that question, but then what we do now, the data kind of led us there. We did
Mhm.
not expect to end up here necessarily. We just kind of stumbled on this, what we call the holy grail of human capacity, right? The data just showed us, look, these elements combined, it sounds like Captain Planet, if you remember Captain Planet.
Oh, I love Captain Planet. I used
I
to
love
work on
Captain
Captain
Planet.
Planet.
No way, I love Captain
Did.
Planet. I love Captain Planet.
Bernard.
It's like, you know, these elements combined
Yes.
lead to optimal human capacity, and we didn't
But
know that.
that's kind of the case, right? It's not one thing anytime, right? And
No.
I love what you're describing, because even as working with scientists and algorithms and all those things, you didn't know that this is where you were going to end up.
No, not at all. I
And
would have
that is like
laughed.
the testament to entrepreneurship, is that, you
Yeah.
know, you sort of start in one area, you try that for a while, and you're like, I'm not sure about that. Let's take a detour, you know? So I think that's great.
Right.
So you keep referencing that that we, right? So is there a team that you work with, or did you assemble a team when you first sought out to do this, or were you already working with somebody? How did that work?
Yeah. So we had a company that was focused on data modeling, and our team there. And now, just recently, we're doing this full time, and this is the new company that we're building. So we have our founders, like foundational team, if you will, and then we're building it out now. So it's an exciting time for us. Like I said, it's kind of, we felt a pull to it because it's very meaningful to us. And there's nothing, I'm sure you know, when you coach people too, there's nothing like seeing those transformational moments. And for me, I'm like, oh my God, we can actually do this at scale. Like
Mm-hmm.
at scale, like everyone can have the opportunity to show up to
Mm-hmm.
life as their best selves, right? um so part of it was the pull, and then part of it, like I said, I always assess the situation. best information I have at the time and then make a choice. And I don't look back after that, because here's the thing, to me, a decision is not a finite thing. It's not this big finite thing. Look, we make a decision best at the time, we learn, we grow, we adapt, we can make new decisions. I think people, if you put too much on this moment,
Much pressure.
all end all, it stifles you, right?
And I think you mentioned that moment. It's not moment, it's moments, right?
Exactly.
There's not this like holy grail, like even after the launch, it just keeps changing. Like, you know, I mean, it's human nature, like you're saying, right? If we want to evolve and grow, we have to change, just like you're saying with the tools that you provide them in this assessment. They need to keep trying new things to try to shift the behavior, correct?
Exactly. And that's what it does. It just guides you through. A lot of people, I think, want to do stuff. There's just so much stuff and they don't know where to start. And so there's some keys to behavior change that are just built into it. We wanted to make it that simple. It's like, look, you don't have to worry about anything. Like, lots of science is behind it, but you don't have to worry about all of that. You just actually follow the recipe. That's all. And the changes will happen. And that's how easy we wanted to make it, because that's how easy it has to be if you want to make mass change, right?
So I hear this amazing British accent in the background, and you mentioned that you actually traveled around the world, mostly in doing your AI, probably in your prior career. Tell me a little bit about, like, how did you make it to America? Like, what happened? You know, was this in your mind's eye in the beginning when you set off in your early years of your life?
So it's a bit of an interesting story here. So I got to travel the globe actually in my employee experience chapter, learning all about the employees around the world. So, but what's interesting about my move to America was that my family tell me when I was very young, I used to say I was going to move to Silicon Valley and start my own business.
So weird.
When I was very young, and I had never, I didn't even know that it was a possibility, how I would get there, but I used to tell everyone that that's what I was going to do when I grew up. And this is what they tell me. And so here's the thing. You've got to work with your mind's process. You know, if your mind doesn't really know reality, non-reality. It's in a black box. It takes in information and it has a library and it makes decisions. So if you really set a goal, your brain's going to do its best bet to achieve that goal, right? And so I had that in my mind from when I was young, and not consciously like, oh, let me set out and figure out how to get to America. But I made certain decisions along the way that I was probably predisposed to make because I'd already had that vision for myself.
Exactly.
So, you know, like apparently that's what I used to say. I didn't even remember that, to be honest with you.
That is
but then
so interesting.
Yeah, the opportunity came to move to California. I'd never even been to California. The first time I was in California was for my in-person interview. They offered me the job right then and there, and I took it. And they were like, no, think about it. And I was like, no, I know what I want to do.
No, I know, done.
Next time I was there, I was moving there. So, you know.
How long ago was that?
Oh, God. I think I've been here like 14 years now or something like that. 12 years, 14 years. I've lost count. Yeah, so I never looked back. And, you know, that's kind of my philosophy is this, like, it was exciting at the time. I'm into technology, where better to be. It was a great opportunity, seems good. I wanted to be there. And if the worst happened and it was terrible, I'd just make a different decision and change it. So
exactly. Nothing, like you said earlier, nothing's permanent.
No.
So for me, like when we're talking about opportunities, right? That opportunity presented itself to you, likely because you had such integrity in your work and you were a front runner in what you were probably doing at your company at the time. But my question for you is, you could have said no, but you think because you're so clear on what you want that you knew, I mean, beyond the fact that you were talking about it when you were in your earlier life, right?
Yeah, which I didn't remember. So I didn't even know that, right? It wasn't until after I told my family that I was going there that they reminded me of this. So it's not like that played into my decision making, but it did, because it was probably in my brain, and my brain was like, hey, it was a book in my brain's library, and it was like, hey, there's an opportunity. But you know, the company at the time, it was HP, when HP was this big Goliath. And I had the utmost respect for Bill and Dave, and just their philosophies and things like that. And I said, that's somewhere I want to be. And you know, what they were doing was really exciting. I was going to be starting the employee experience kind of division within IT. and they hadn't really done it. So it had a lot of opportunity to create. And you know how much I love to create. So, so I was like, why not? Let's just go.
And autonomy, probably autonomy.
Yeah, to an extent, right? Like I could figure out what this role would be. And I'm very happy operating in the gray. So, you know, for me, it was great. And how exciting to move to a nice, warm place with some, some nice scenery, right?
Exactly.
And like I said, I don't see things as this big finite thing. So if the worst happened, I would just do something else and you know, give it a try. Why not?
Has there, like, in your mind's eye, is there an opportunity that sort of slipped away, or that you ever think back and say, why didn't I take that? Or what if?
So I really don't bother with what ifs, because I believe that once we make that decision and we take that step forward, life is just unfolding with that direction. And you know, what ifs are great and they can be fun to think about, but like I just don't have mental capacity to be worrying about the 50 million things that could have happened.
That's clear.
Yeah, it's like, well, the thing is, what's the point? I already made the choice, right? The moment went. Sometimes, of course, you'll be like, oh, I wonder if I'd done that, but I'll do it in like a fun way. Like I don't let it drain myself or like worrying if it was the right decision, because hey, I made the decision, right? So the moment has passed. So now all I do is focus my energy on what can I do right now, and if the decision I made ended up being not such a great one, like what can I do to change that, or what can I just learn and take forward with me? There's definitely been things in my life where I'm like, it was probably a great opportunity, but you know what, at the time when I thought about it, I didn't feel it was right, and there was a reason I didn't feel like it was right at the time. So there was always some reason as to why you done something at the time, right? So therefore I made a decision based on the information at the time. Why worry about it now? Right?
Exactly. So what's the dream?
The dream is to make sure every human can show up as their best selves and not have to be wasting their mental capacity on the things that don't matter to them and the people around them. Because I think that we're at a point now where so many people are impacted by negative emotions or stress or overwhelm. People are less tolerant because they just don't know how to handle all of this stuff. And I think that, you know, if we want to create a better world, we're going to have to help people get there by helping them retrain how they process and how they think and how they respond, how we show up. And the dream is that we have a world where everyone does that, because I cannot even imagine the innovation that will happen when people's minds have the space to actually be creative and enjoy themselves and enjoy life. I mean, that's a world I'd like for myself and my kids and any potential grandkids.
Exactly. Well, I mean, you know, a world where there's more common understanding of one another and acceptance. And like you said, if we're living our best life and we love ourselves, then what better place to live, right?
Exactly right. I mean, you can be super happy and you don't have to have all the stuff that you think you need, right? You can be very fulfilled actually and live a life full of abundance. It doesn't, but you might have a small house, or you might have it it doesn't matter, right? It's just focusing in on those things and channeling your energy in the right way. So you know, you feel like, hey, I'm doing a pretty good job here.
So if the dream is to have a world where each person is living their best life and their best self, what would the dream be? Where would you implement that? Like, if you could just pick anywhere to place this, like that you would get the maximum impact.
Well, you know, there's so many categories, if you will.
So many opportunities.
There's so many, because there's like, you know, people that are working and feeling pressure from work or burnout from work. There are couples that, you know, like want to have greater relationships together. You know, they can go on their journeys together. There's families. It's really just in the hands of humans is where we have to get it, right? In the hands of humans. And then of course the youth too. I mean, the youth are really struggling as well. How can we help them from now grow what they need for resiliency and to tackle the world that they may face, because we just simply don't know. I don't know what the world will be like in 18 years time, right? So how can I best prepare?
That, like, it's a government contract with the school systems so that you're reaching them earlier?
Well, I think, that I don't know the details of, right? But like, I know in some way we also want to make sure that we are taking what we've learned, like, look here, these are the critical skills. How can we be proactive in equipping the youth with it? Because that's going to enable them to show up as their best selves from as early as possible.
Exactly.
And, you know, bring themselves to life and handle situations well. And of course, you're going to have things where you have to learn. That's not what we're saying. We're not saying like, let's take away everyone's bad moments. We're saying, let's change how we handle them, how we respond.
It's almost like implementing a growth mindset in someone.
Yeah, exactly. It is a lot like that. That's a big part of being energized, actually, is having a growth mindset. It's this myriad of things that all come together, and a growth mindset's a big part of it.
Absolutely. Well, I would love for you to inform people where they can find you, where they might be able to sign up for the assessment, and just anything extra that you'd love to share with them.
So you can find us at the website that's listed, or also on Instagram.
Okay, great. Yeah. And so what I can say is that just having worked with Sarah, just this little bit that I have in these last few months, I honestly encourage you to step in and take the assessment, because it's available for you so that you can reach your goals. So many of us stop ourselves and have these blockers that Sarah's talking about, but why not educate ourselves on how to move through the door and not close the door to our blockers? So I want to thank Sarah for her time, and yes, please look at her website and please educate yourself on their company and things that we could do to have a happier world. So,
thanks,
and
Michelle.
follow us on Opportunity Knocks.
That for sure. Lots of nuggets in every episode. So
absolutely. All right. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thanks, Michelle.